Hi everyone, welcome to Dennis Deep Cuts, the 42nd installment of this fine YouTube series. Today we're going to talk about Adrian Borland and the mental health. Let's see what happens. Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about Adrian Borland. He's probably my favorite singer of all time and one of my favorite songwriters. Mostly known for his band The Sound, a fantastic post-punk band, but he's done a lot of stuff, and he's one of those dudes that I think should have been recognized as one of the great singers and songwriters of the 80s and 90s, but his career was plagued by mental health issues and some poor decisions, and just wrong time and place maybe, so his career never took off, which is a shame because I think he is just fabulous. He's one of those artists that is truly fascinating. He's got a truly unique voice, a truly unique melodic language, which I love. Also, last week's episode when I talked about records that I have the most, the artists that I have the most records with, Adrian Borland should have been on the list. But since he's done so many different projects, it wasn't like one of his projects, So I have like 52 records with Adrian Borland's name on it, and he's a truly unique artist. So we're going to talk about that today. I want to dig into his discography and talk about his life based on the project and bands that he was doing. And if you know Adrian Borland, you know a lot of this already. And if you don't, I'm slightly jealous because you get to discover one of the great artists of the 80s and 90s. Before we go on, I want to do some blatant advertisement. Last year, Invasion did a European tour, and we ended up at the Clouds Hill studio where we recorded a live session that's now out. It came out last week. We recorded a live record that was just recorded straight on tape and mixed as we were recording it. It was a very, very unique experience. You can find it on your regular streaming services, and you can find a beautiful piece of vinyl at your good record store, or maybe order it from Clouds Hill. But yeah, let's dig into Adrian Borland, shall we? So Adrian Borland was born in 1957 in the Hampstead area of London. And when he was a young guy, he started his first punk band called the Outsiders. They released 2 albums and 1 7-inch. It's really cool. It's really great. I actually bought the 7-inch years and years before I knew who Adrian Borland was or The Sound or anything. I just thought it was one of those great punk rock 7-inches from the UK. I'm going to pick their second record, Close Up, from 1979 as my pick for the Outsiders. Their first record, Calling on Youth, is pretty cool. I read somewhere that it was one of the first DIY punk releases from the UK. I mean, it's from 1977. When Adrian started playing, his father, Bob, was super supportive. He was so supportive that he bought a 4-track recorder and some microphones, and he set up shop in his living room basically, and he recorded the Outsiders records there. And then when no one wanted to release it, he started his record label called Raw Edge Records, where he released the Outsiders albums. The first album, Calling Youth, is pretty cool, but you could hear that it sounds like a demo basically, and it sounds like a young band trying to learn their chops. Some of Adrian's, melodies are already in place, but it does sound like a bit demo-y, but there's some cool songs. The second record, Close Up, is great. It sounds better. Vital Hours might be one of Adrian's best punk rock songs, and it's just a really, really cool record. Outsiders, one of those bands, they played around in London, and they were pretty cool force to be reckoned with. And if you want to check out Adrian's early punk roots, the Outsiders are pretty great. So the Outsiders kind of morphed into The Sound, and I think The Sound is the band, of course. I think they're like the cornerstone of Adrian's career, and I think it's also, that's where I discovered his music with the sound. And I think the sound should have been one of the biggest post-punk bands of the 80s. Alas, they were not, and we're going to talk a little bit about why that is. They started in 1980, and they got signed to Korova Records, which was a subsidiary to like the Warner Elektra Asylum Group. And they wanted to have like an indie label where they could put out some cool indie stuff. They also released the Echo and the Bunnymen records and the UK versions of The Residents, amongst other records. They put out the first rap record, Jeopardy, in 1980, and then in 1981 they put out From the Lion's Mouth, which is a phenomenal record. I think, in my opinion, I think that all of the sound records are worth having and worth listening to. They're all fantastic from start to finish. But I think this is an excellent starting point if you want to check out, Adrian Borland's music. Basically, it's their second record from 1981, and the record label said, like, let's do this, and then they put out actually gave them some money to record, and they put out this record, and both their first albums got great reviews, but the audience didn't really care that much about them. So when they were supposed to record their third record, All Fall Down, WEA said, okay, we're going to bump you up to the big label, and it's going to be more commercial, and should just do commercial record, which I find is insane, because when I listen to the first two records, there's so many hooks, there's so many hits, there's so many great melodies, there's so many great songs, that it blows my mind that the label thought they were not commercial enough. It's insane. Obviously, All Fall Down is, of course, their least commercial records of all the records they put out. It's very experimental, and I wouldn't say it's weird, but it's just very different and very experimental. And they got dropped from the label right after it got released. They're like, we can't deal with this. Around this time, it's where Adrian started really showing, symptoms of his mental health issues. He actually tried to kill his parents in an episode that he had, and then he got hospitalized and he tried to kill himself. So if you see like clips of Adrian Borland from the later 80s, he's got a huge scar across his throat. And the band soldiered on. They got dropped from WEA and got signed to Static Record, and then they released Shock of Daylight in 1984, I think, which I think is up there amongst some of the greatest stuff Adrian's ever done. It's really dark, it's really stark, but it's a fabulous EP. It's 6 songs. And then they did 2 more records, Hands and Hearts, and in 1987 they released Thunder Up, which I think is fine. It's probably their weakest record, but I do think it's fine. It has some great songs. And as the years progressed, while the first couple of records were kind of, the first 2 records especially, was very post-punkish, very propulsive. As the years went on, it became more just rock, but great rock. So I think all records in the discography is worth checking out. When they're going to go on tour for, I think it was Thunder Up, on the first show in Spain, Adrian kind of lost the plot, and as they were playing, he saw things, and he thought that they were after him, and he had a complete breakdown, and he had to go home, and he became hospitalized again, and then they tried to finish the tour, but it signaled the end of the band. And one of the issues was that when Adrian was on medication, it was fine, but he had this idea that, like as a lot of people do, like the medication might hamper his creative output, and he especially thought that it made his singing not as good. So whenever he was going to try to be creative, like he went off his medications, and then he went off the rails, and those episodes just kind of kept happening, and it signaled the end of the band in 1987. So while active in the sound, Adrian was always into doing other projects and doing other things. And one of the things he did was a project together with a bass player from the sound, Graham Bailey, and they did a band project called Second Layer. Second Layer put out 2 7-inches and one pretty fantastic LP called World of Rubber from 1981, recorded in France and released on a French label. It does have some of the melodic language of the sound, but it's very minimalistic. It has like really old school drum machines and synths, some guitar and bass, but everything feels very minimalistic and very punky. It's like almost like electro clash punk, but like 20 years ahead of its time. One of the things with the sound is that most of the songs are dealing with relationships and love, and also Adrian's mental health, because he sings quite openly about the way he's feeling and the demons that he's struggling with and so on and so forth. While Second Layer is all political, and it's very confrontational, very political, and super cool. I cannot recommend it enough. I think it's maybe not best, but definitely one of the coolest projects that Adrian ever did. And this year, someone put out a compilation with the 2 7-inches and some unreleased stuff called Courts of War on vinyl. That's definitely worth seeking out. And also, I think World of Rubber is released on some double LP thing as well. Second Layer, I don't think they played live. I don't think it was that kind of band, but it's definitely worth checking out. It's super cool, super interesting. So another project that Adrian Borland was involved in, this is also a project that I knew about before I knew about the sound and before I knew about Adrian's music. It's The Witch Trials from 1981. And if you think The Witch Trials sounds familiar, it might be because it's released on Alternative Tentacles, and it features Yellow Biafra from the Dead Kennedys on vocals. I have no idea how this happened, but I assume that Dead Kennedys was touring Europe, and they ended up in London, and Adrian, Yellow Biafra, a guy called Christian Lunch, who is like a minimalist synth guy, and a guy called Morgan Fisher, who was in Mott the Hoople and British Lions and some other bands. They wound up in the studio and they recorded this EP of super weird, eerie, like almost dub music. Adrian's playing bass, and Yellow Biafra has the spoken word kind of thing going on. And it's a really cool, spooky, strange oddity in both Adrian's career and Yellow Biafra's career as well. And I think it's super cool. Definitely not, if you love the sound, maybe this is a bit too different, but I think it's a super cool project, and I just want to know, I would love to be a fly on the wall for this project. It's like, how did this happen? Did Jello and Adrian, were they close? Were they friends? Or was it just like, they're fucking around, getting drunk in the studio? I don't know. We might have to, research this. But it's a cool EP, and it's definitely one of Adrian's more weird projects, and it's super worth checking out. So the sound broke up in late 1987, and Adrian stuck around in Holland. The sound, they were one of those bands, as I said, I think they should have been massive, but they never really took off anywhere apart from Holland, where they were quite big. So Adrian stuck around in Holland, and he started a band called Adrian Borland and the Citizens, and put out 2 records, and their first record came in 1989, 2 years after the last sound record, called Alexandria. And in 1992, they put out a record, Brittle Heaven, which is released on Play Again Sam Records. And it's just a really beautiful record. It's more pop and more subdued than the sound. The sound had a very, it was a distinct band. It wasn't only Adrian Borland. I'm not going to gloss over the fact that the rhythm section of the sound is fucking amazing, and the keyboard player in the sound is really cool and really distinct. Adrian together with Dutch band. It's more mellow 80s rock, but really nice. The melodies are fabulous. The songwriting is great. After the 2 records with the Citizens, Adrian Borland tried to do some demos with another Dutch band. But the record label kind of rejected them, and then he had another episode where he tried to kill himself, and then he moved back to the UK. So Adrian moved back to the UK, and he was not in great shape mentally or physically, and the last years of his career has led quite a dwindling existence. Didn't really play that much. He released a couple of solo records, but when they were released on CD, and I think it was affairs that very few people really cared about. He didn't really play live. I mean, once in a while he did some shows and tours, but all in all, he was not in great shape. Luckily enough, in the last couple of years, there's been a little bit of a resurgence of Adrian's music, and I mean, when I started listening to them, I mean, the records really hard, the sound records are really hard to find, and now they're all reissued and repressed, and a Dutch label reissued all 3 of his solo records on vinyl, and I picked the last one from 1997. It's called 5 AM, and while I do think that all 3 of his solo records are good, I think this one's actually great, and it's weird to think of on the fact that no one really cared about Adrian Borland at this point. The songwriting is crisp. This record does remind me a lot of The Sound, and it has some great songs on it, and sounds pretty good, and it is surprising that no one cared about him at this point. I'm really glad that these reissues are happening, that we can listen to them on vinyl, and that people are rediscovering his music. At this time, he was also doing a project called White Rose Transmission with a guy called Carlo von Putten, a German guy that was singer of the band, the Covenant, like a post-punk band from Germany. They recorded a sound cover, and Adrian reached out and he said, "Oh, I really like what you're doing." So they did a band together where this Carlo guy was actually singing, and Adrian's playing guitar and writing songs. And that's like the only Adrian Borland stuff that I don't have, because that's only released on CD so far. So hopefully someone will re-release that on vinyl as well. It'd be really cool to hear. In 1999, Adrian reached out to a bunch of his friends, and he's been writing a bunch of songs together with the Carlo guy, and he said, "I'm going to do a new record," and a lot of the people that reached out to was people that he had played with in years, and they're all excited to meet up with Adrian, and they start recording a record with him, and by all accounts, everyone says that it was sounding great, the songs were great, but Adrian, being true to who he was, he felt really self-conscious about his singing, so he went off his meds, and he started acting erratic and kind of crazy, and they laid down all the basic trackings, and he was going to start doing his vocals, and he got super nervous about it, I guess. And the producer said, "You should go back on your meds. I'll trust me to tell you if your singing is not up to par." And they were in the studio on a Friday, and they told Adrian, like, we need to break here, and you need to go home over the weekend, rest up, and get back on your meds, and then on Monday, let's start doing vocals and finish this record. And that Monday, going to the studio, Adrian Borland killed himself. He threw himself in front of a train, and ending his life at 43 years old. And I mean, he tried to kill himself a bunch of times before that, so I guess it was inevitable, and that's a great sadness. The songs that was supposed to become his 4th record, there exists an album of demo versions of those songs, and there's some great songs on there. But yeah, that's the tragic life of Adrian Borland. I want to talk a little bit about like how we tend to mythologize people that are struggling. There's this sense and idea that these tortured souls are something that we write books about, and we praise them. And there's a duality to it where I do think a lot of artists are sensitive people, and that's kind of what brings us into art, I guess. But there has to be balance between like how we actually feel, and how our mental health, and the creative output that we have. I think it's dangerous to say that you have to feel like shit to be able to create great art, which has been the myth for a very, very long time. I think it's dangerous to elevate. These people, oh, he's crazy, but a lot of times when people are crazy, they're actually struggling. They're struggling with themselves, and they're struggling with mental health. And I think it's important to talk about that. And there's a movie about Adrian's life called Walk in the Opposite Direction that came out a couple of years ago. That's really nice, and it deals with his career, but a lot of it deals with his mental health struggles and issues. And I think that was fantastic that they put the focus on that, and not his music, but actually how he felt. And a couple of years back, this CD called Do You Feel That Way Too? Released by Altered Dune in the States. Invasion actually recorded a cover of a sound song, and all the proceeds from this little CD went to like an organization that deals with the mental health of struggling musicians. So I think it's good that conversation is out there, that we're actually talking about it, that we're trying to put it out in the open, and try to explain how we feel. I know that we all struggle, and not only musicians and artists. I think that's of course not true. Like we all struggle. But there's something in your job description when people tell you, people don't really tell you, but when your job is to sit down and pour your soul out, pour your heart out, and like dig out your innermost secrets, and then present that to the world. There's something really strange about that, and there's something really weird, and it makes you really exposed, because you're sharing of these innermost thoughts and ideas, and then people post on Instagram, it's like, yeah, your new record sucks, you're an idiot, and you're like, yeah, I just poured my heart and soul out. So there's something in that job description that it's just, we dig a lot internally, maybe not always good, but I do think that it is good to talk about these issues. Everyone struggles, and I think it's important sort of to understand that. There's a great book came out a couple of years ago called Capitalism Realism by Mark Fisher, where he talks about the connection between capitalism and mental health issues, and the economical, social, cultural structures that we have, and how they affect us, and how we feel like shit. And it is sad and wild to see us living in a world where most people struggle with these things, and we just sort of accept it. And we just say, I guess that's the way it goes. Yeah. In conclusion, check out Adrian Borland's music. It's beautiful. Be kind to each other. Take care of each other. Listen to each other. If you feel like you're drowning, reach out your hand, ask for help. I'm sure your friends will help you. I think that especially men my age, very, very, we're very bad at talking about how we feel and why we feel that way. Learn to communicate, and if you meet people and they're acting weird, don't judge them too harsh. They're probably struggling with some demons of their own. Yeah, So just be kind. I mean, the world out there is a fucking shit show right now, and we need to take care of each other. So that's it. Until next time, stay wild, my friends. Bye-bye.